So in this first half of the day, we're going to talk about books, and then we're going to actually go look at the shelves and find some books. In the second half of the day, we're going to talk about databases and articles. So books are important. There are actually a few reasons that you might want to consult a book as opposed to an article. And a lot of people think that they don't want to consult books because books are long, right? But the secret of academic books is you don't actually have to read the entire book, right? So the books are split up into chapters. Often the chapters have different authors, although not always. And there is no problem with just choosing the chapter that is relevant to what you want to write about. That is perfectly fine. So finding the book that has that chapter can be kind of an adventure. But the idea that you have to read the whole book, not correct. The other thing that's nice about books is they often assume less knowledge from you going in. So articles are really specific, right? If I'm writing an article about Pride and Prejudice, I'm just going to focus on that. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with Austen scholarship and kind of go for it. Books have a little bit more time, so they give more of an introduction, and they invite you in better. So they're often a good place to start if you don't already know a lot. Also, they can have a more general scope. So if I'm writing about Pride and Prejudice, I write an article about Pride and Prejudice, that's great. On the other hand, if I want to know about women's writing in Regency England, there's more likely to be a book about that than an article. Articles are really just about, often, most of the time, they're just about a work or a group of works. Okay, so this is the library website. We're actually linked from the Queen's College site. So I know that because you're not Queen's College students, you may not have checked out the Queen's College website before. It's not that hard to find. I'm the kind of person who likes to type things in, so I just go qc.cuny.edu. Some people like to search for it. Either way is fine, but up at the top, there's this link that says libraries. Right up here. And that link brings you to the library website. So there are actually two ways to search for books, right? There's kind of the old way and the new way. And I'm going to talk about the old way because I know a little bit better, but we'll
Peter, I think.
So the old way is the catalog.
You could sit up in the front over here.
And you can get there either by going in quickly and clicking on Find Books and Media, or by going under Research and choosing CUNY Catalog. And catalog is a word that means a list or a collection. So the catalog is a list of things that we own in the library. Okay, so have any of you seen this before? Mm-hmm. Yes. Did you see it when you were at Queensboro?
No, here.
Here. Oh, okay.
I came for a summer program, so sort of like did something similar to this, but I sort of forgot it too.
Okay, so then a refresher may help, and I think it will definitely help everyone else. But that's great. I'm glad that you've already encountered this. So this is a list of all the things we have at Queen's College. Now, one thing to keep in mind that I think is really important, we have the same catalog across all of CUNY. So you'll see this is a list of all the CUNY schools. So if you come here, you'd be using this catalog, but if you go to one of these other schools as well, if you go to Hostos, or you go to Hunter, or you go to Baruch, the catalog searches their collections as well. So it's the same system, which is convenient for learning. Also, we have the ability to send things among the different CUNY libraries. So CUNY is kind of weird in its organizational structure, but in some ways we're like one institution, one entity. So any book that's held at the Graduate Center Library, we can request and have it sent here, right? Also, I have a CUNY ID card. I can go to, excuse me, I can go to, let's say, City Tech, and I can show them my card, and I can get into the library and walk across campus. All of that stuff. So being part of CUNY, I think is a real advantage have as much as CUNY as a whole does. So that's something that I urge you to keep in mind. So we're going to start out just searching Queens College because that's where we are today, but keep in mind you can search across CUNY. So okay, so this is a catalog. And the catalog search is really different from some other kinds of searches that you might do because you're not searching inside the book. What you're searching is a description of the book. So what are some of the, let's actually make a list of that. And I keep this because I have bad handwriting, so I'm going to type things. What are some of the works that you've decided to write about?
1984.
1984. Good. What else?
Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre.
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice. So that was a good example. Any others? Anyone else feel bold? Yeah.
The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Picture of Dorian Gray. Is it, I forget, is it A-Y or E-Y?
A1.
So, so all of these books are the works of pretty major authors, right? And so we're going to have books about their work. And I just want to show you, just to start out, what it looks like when a book is in the catalog. And I'm going to start with this one, just so you can see. I'm going to do that. The simplest thing I can do. Actually, yeah. So, okay. So this is what the catalog knows about this book, right? So when I'm searching, these are the words that my search terms have to match up with. So we've got the title, we've got the publisher, we've got the author, and then we have these subjects, right? So those are the only terms that would bring this up as a search term, right? The catalog doesn't read your mind, it doesn't track your history, it doesn't know what you want. It's just matching the words you use to words that happen to be in there. So it's really helpful to know what words there are. That's why these subjects are so useful, right? So this book is about appearance, philosophy, fiction. So the way this is set up, there's this concept of appearance, right? But maybe it can exist in more than one way. Maybe there's more than one concept of appearance. So they use these parentheses to show that this is the philosophy of the concept of appearance as it works in philosophy. So when you see parentheses like that, it's a disambiguator. Like in Wikipedia, you know how they have sometimes you'll type in a word and it'll say, well, that could mean 5 different things. Here's a page. That's basically what this thing in the parentheses is doing. And then you have the dashes. And the dashes let you get more specific. So in this case, the Picture of Dorian Gray is a work of fiction. We all assume. So it wants to tell you that. The dashes tell you that this is a specific subset of all of these books. So we have a certain number of books that are about appearance, right? And some of them are just about appearance in general, but this is one of the ones that's about fiction. So if we were to look at this in the catalog, what we would see, and I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to look at the second one, Browse the Headings List, because I want to show you what this alphabetical list looks like. Actually, you know what? I'm going to choose a different heading that's a better example. Sorry. Conduct of Life. Conduct of Life sounds like a good one, right? Okay, so here, there are 17 books that are fiction about the conduct of life. There's one book that's about the conduct of life in Great Britain, but specifically the history of the conduct of life in Great Britain in the 19th century. So what the dashes do is they let it get more specific. And the reason that they do it that way, instead of just writing 19th century Great Britain conduct of life, is so that we can look through this alphabetical list and see the things that are related to each other, right? So we can see all of the different ways that the books address conduct of life, and we can see what the books that are about conduct of life are specifically about. So these can be really helpful. The problem is that when you're going in, you don't know what the right heading is going to be, right? So you don't know what words to use to search, except you do. And this is what I love, is just, you know something that you didn't know that you knew. So each of these books has an author. right? So with 1984, it's Orwell. With Jane Eyre, it's Bronte, and that's slightly more complicated, of course, because there are several Brontes. Pride and Prejudice is Austen. Dorian Gray is Wilde. So what we can do is we can actually search for books about that author. So if we're interested in Orwell, we can do a subject begins with search. And what subject begins with does is it's searching this list, right? So we're looking for the place in this list where this subject turns up. So we can say Orwell George. And you might wonder as I'm putting this in, will this work? Does it say George Orwell or is it under Eric Blair? Well, that's a good question, but it actually is under George Orwell. So that's lucky for us, right? So you can see that we have 22 books that are about Orwell. We have 4 that are about Animal Farm, which was a different work of his. We have 22 that are about criticism and interpretation. And that's a heading that will exist for almost every author. So criticism and interpretation is usually a good way to go because you're criticizing and interpreting, right? So you want other works that are also doing the same thing. But there are others. Homes and haunts, that's interesting. So about places he likes to go. And at the top, and this is hard to see, at the top we have these buttons that say previous page and next page. So I can actually say, I want to know what comes next. Right? And I can see there are 14 books that are about 1984 specifically. So that's pretty great, right? And sometimes these books that are about a specific work that you're looking at won't be very good, right? So in this case, this top one looks kind of interesting, right? It's about immigration, which may or may not be relevant, but it's definitely going to discuss 1984. You also end up sometimes getting these things that are like novels for students, and I don't find those to be terribly useful. I usually just ignore them. So sometimes you won't find a lot of stuff in there, but sometimes you'll find good stuff. And often you'll find this is the case for these major works that are the most well-known. The other thing I want to say about that, though, is that just because there's a list of books that are about 1984, it does not follow that the rest of the books about Orwell don't say anything about 1984, right? It's probably his most significant work, right? So if I go into criticism and interpretation, and I look at the books under there, probably some of them will be about 1984, or will address 1984. They'll have a chapter about 1984. So other headings are good as well. But we're here, so let's look at this one. One thing you'll notice is that there are 2 different kinds of resources, right? There are electronic resources and there are books. The electronic resources are mostly ebooks. There are a few other things in there. And the ebooks are exactly the same as print books except they're open. So those, basically, they count the same way, except for how you're going to access them. And the books are actually on the shelf. Okay. So the ebooks are kind of great. They're pretty convenient. And what I like about them is that I can use them as examples without having to actually pass books around, because you can all see what I'm doing now. So when you open this up, the first thing you're going to see is this table of contents. And a table of contents is a really useful thing, right? So remember how we were talking about how you don't need to read the entire book, right? It's fine to just find a chapter. Table of contents, very, very useful because it helps you find the right chapter, right? So if we're looking at this book that's about 1984 and immigration, maybe this is a really interesting chapter. You speak new labor and old racism, how immigration controls corrupt language, right? So you can choose the one that you think looks interesting. So that's the first tool when you're using a book, the table of contents. And I'm showing you this with an ebook, but of course print books have this as well. So I can just go straight there, and I can say, and I can see this chapter. Okay, so subject in the book. So we've got, for instance, asylum seekers, and then you have all of these other topics that are related to asylum seeking, right? So asylum seekers in general, and then it's a lot like when you're looking through the catalog, right? Asylum seekers, denied welfare support, page 107. So if I only am interested in that, page 107 would be a good place to go. So again, this can tell me what part of the book is talking about the thing that I'm interested in, and I can go straight there and just read that part. And of course, there's the thing that only ebooks can do, which is you can actually search inside of it. So I can say, okay, I'm interested in, I'm going to see how it talks about marriage, right? And I can find that it's mentioned in these different chapters, right? So here, this is about immigration marriage rules. So those are 3 different ways to find what you want in a book. Pretty useful, I think. Okay, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to the catalog. That's a good start. Now, some authors are easier to search in this way than others, right? So Orwell, we had kind of a reasonable number of books. We felt we could look through them. If we're going to do someone like Austen, though, it gets a little difficult because, and I'm back at the beginning now. I'm searching for Austen Jane. The trouble with this is that we have a lot of books about Austen, and we have a lot of subjects relating to Austen, right? So there are 60 that are just criticism and interpretation. There are a lot that are about family and film adaptations. So I find it useful to go through and just see what the books are about, but it's kind of impractical to go into each of these headings and actually look at the books. So in a case like this, if you're looking at Austen, if you're looking at Shakespeare, if you're looking at someone who just has this massive body of criticism about them, that's a case in which I would go to the advanced search, right? And the advanced search is, honestly, in most resources, I'll go straight to the advanced search. In the catalog, I usually don't start there because I can get so much done with the basic search. But if you're searching someone and there's just too much, you just don't want to go through all of it, advanced search can help. So I'm still using a subject search. I still want books that are about Jane Austen. But maybe I want to search them along with a keyword, right? So who's writing about Austen? You are. Okay, so what are you writing about?
Well, I'm sort of doing like an author study, so the historical context behind it, and her biography, and trying to tie all that together.
Okay, so you could do something, let's just say biography, just for the sake of argument. So here, it tells you, right, we have 223 books about Austen. We have about 29,000 books that say biography somewhere. And then we have 24 that are both of those, right? So that's what the advanced search is good for. You notice I'm doing Austen as a subject search. The other word I'm just doing as an all fields, like a general search. So I can combine different types of searches. I do have more options at the bottom. So I can say, oh no, everything I found is in French, right? And so I can say I just want English. But for right now, this is good enough. So here are 24 books. They're about Jane Austen's biography, and I can go through them. And you'll notice that the most recent one is at the top. Also, this is a DVD, so we do have other